Hi everyone, I want to present another video from runhorse.com, and it's going to be on 10 tips to how to win at Texas Hold'em Poker. And we're very excited to present this video, and let's get right into the tips. Tip number one is to focus on cash games or tournaments. Most players, there's two types of games that you can play generally in Texas Hold'em, and they're either tournament players or they're cash game players, and each one has their own little nuances. And some players will specialize in cash games, while others will specialize in tournaments. So if you find yourself being a good tournament player and you like tournaments, you have success in it, I would focus mostly on tournaments. Maybe play a few cash games here and there, but the style of play is going to be different. And if you are good at cash games, some people, they do not do well in tournaments. Tournaments, sometimes you have to have more patience. You have to really wait, and they take a long time sometimes, and it can be very frustrating when you do bust out, and you've played for a long time and you have nothing to show for it. So both of them require different sets of skills, and you have to go with your strong suit. So that's tip number one. Okay, let's move right along into tip number two, and that's that older players are generally tighter than young guns. And what we mean by this is that normally at a table is your older players are more patient and they're more willing to wait it out, and they generally will have they've played a lot more hands, they've seen a lot more life. So just as a general experience, those older players will generally go in with something. It's rare that an older player goes in with nothing. And these younger players are definitely much more hyper aggressive. They've watched a lot of this online poker, or they played online poker, or they watch this television poker, and they have a different style generally than their older counterparts. So this is something to keep in mind. If someone does go all in on you, and it's a younger player, and you have a tough decision to make, generally in that situation, you always have to know the player. But generally in that situation, I would call the younger player and I would fold to the older player if that's all I have to go by. And that's tip number two. And you'll see this again and again. Okay, let's move into tip number three, and that's to look for tables with weaker players than you. And this is a key to success in poker, especially if you're playing cash games. This is something that a lot of players don't think about, but if you walk into a lion's den, you're probably going to get eaten. So you have to be very, very careful what tables you choose. If you walk into a table, it's full of professionals. It's going to be very difficult, but not impossible to win. So I would look for a table, that you can find some, you look around the table, and if you can find some weaker players, they always say if you can't find the sucker at the table, then you're it. So that's an old adage in poker. So if you play with Phil Hellmuth and guys like that, you're probably gonna lose in the long run. Guys that are world champions. So I would look for a player table, especially if you're a beginner that has similar players that have similar skill sets. So you might have to play those lower stakes at first, and then jump up to a higher stake if you can find a weak game where you get some loose players in there, or some players that aren't that good that just have a lot of money, then that's a good option for you to try. So try to find those tables with weaker players, and you will have an advantage over time, especially. Okay, let's move right along here to tip number four, and that's to only play solid starting hands and to call a maximum of 1 in 3 hands pre-flop. And this is a tip that I wish someone had given to me when I was starting out. It's generally, something that you do when you don't have a lot of experience in poker, is that you tend to call a lot of flops. And you tend to want to see a lot of flops and to see if you hit them, and you call them with a lot of junk hands. So you need to tighten up your starting hands, and you definitely want to play pocket pairs, things like that, unless there's a large raise. Maybe for a small raise you would call something like that. But a lot of times you just want to, you want to be patient, and you have to wait to have a decent hand to go in. If you have those suited connectors, maybe a 10-jack suited, a queen-jack suited, something like that, you could call to see the flop. But those are not really raising hands. They're good calling hands normally. So if you find yourself playing more than 1 in 3 hands pre-flop, you're probably playing way too many. Throw away those queen eights, offsuit 3-5s, crazy hands like that. If you want to play something like that once in a while, or if you want to try to put in a raise to, try to fool somebody, maybe in position, that could be an interesting play. But generally, you want to play, real good players will play no more than 1 in 3 starting hands, and generally it's down to about 1 in 4. I like to see the flop about 1 in 4. Now, obviously, it's going to change depending on my cards. I may see a couple flops in a row, and then I may not see a flop for 5 or 6 hands. So that's just the way poker works. So good luck with this tip, and that's tip number 4. Okay, let's jump into tip number 5, and this is a really good tip. It's to call. Don't raise with small pairs pre-flop because you are looking to flop a set, and a set is 3 of a kind. It's known as a set. When you have a pair in your hand and you make you make the trips on the board, you make 3 of a kind. So if you have a pair of 5s in your hand and the flop comes 5, 8, 9, you flop this set of 5s. So that's what you're looking to do with these small pairs. And a lot of people, they overplay these small pairs. They try to make a big raise pre-flop to try to take down the pot. There are some situations where you're in a heads-up situation, or if you're late in a tournament where that makes sense and you don't have a lot of chips. But generally with these small pairs, you're looking to flop a set and trap someone. So you just want to limp in with them. You just want to call and hope nobody raises. And you want to be in a pot with a lot of players. Generally, that's where you're going to get your good money, because if you flop a set and someone flops 2 pair, for example, or a top pair, you got a chance to win a lot of money. So that's the situation you want to be in with these small pairs, and some people will overplay them pre-flop, and they will price themselves out. So you have to be in the introverse, you have to be aware when someone raises a large raise pre-flop that you're probably beat with your small pair. So in that case, you have to throw it away, and that's just the type of game it is. So good luck with this play. Okay, let's take a look at tip number 6, and that's with high pairs like aces or kings. Try to get your money all in pre-flop versus 1 or 2 opponents maximum. And this is very important. Now, I've seen a lot of people go broke with aces or kings, believe it or not, trying to misplay their hand. And a lot of people, they think if they get a pair of aces or kings that they can't lose, and that's not the case. You are a good favorite, but you are only a good favorite against one hand. And let's explain that to you. If you get your money all in pre-flop, in other words, if someone raises you and you go all in, and they happen to call you, and you get them heads up, so that's the situation you want to be in normally. You have a pair of aces or kings, and someone has a smaller pair. They might have a pair of 10s or a pair of 9s. You're an 80% favorite in that case to beat them. Now, if you throw in another hand there, if you get 3-way action, you go in against 2 hands. Say you go in against a pair of 9s, and somebody else calls you with a queen-king suited. Your odds are about 64%, something like that. So you see how it drops quite a bit. So you're much more vulnerable against 2 hands or more. And people that slow play aces will generally get burned. You'll see a lot of this where they limp in with it and they try to trap somebody, and they can definitely be burned unless they do catch that third ace. So it's something to keep in mind. I played with some really good players in my time at the Felt. And a lot of players have told me, especially older players, that when you have a pair of aces or kings and someone opens the pot and they make a raise, you should put in a large raise or even all in at that point, because that's basically free money out there that they laid on the table because you have the best hand pre-flop. If you have aces, you have the best hand for sure. If you have kings, and it's likely you have the best hand. So you want to get your money all in pre-flop with these hands. And, sometimes sometimes the player's not going to call you, but that's just a chance you have to take. And, you're going to avoid losing a lot of pots if you play aces and kings this way. And you'll be surprised that people will call you. They will call at times. So good luck with this play. That's tip number 6. Okay, here we go with tip number 7, and that's pay attention to position in a hand and play accordingly. And if you don't know what position is, you better familiarize yourself with it. It's something you need to learn. Every position at the table is important. The main positions are, of course, the button, which is the dealer. That's where you have the position in the hand. It's called being on the button or in position. And you have the best, most favorable hand there because you get to see all the players that open ahead of you. If they want to play their hand, they have the option. And when it comes to you, it's only you versus the blinds. So you can see if someone raised ahead of you, and you can change your play accordingly. So that's a very important position to be in. And a lot of people do like to raise on the button, especially if everyone ahead of them, there's been like a couple limps, no one has raised, or everyone is folded. Sometimes you can pick up those blinds, especially in a tournament. It's very important. So vice versa, being in the blind, the big blind, you have the option. If everyone limps in, you have the option to raise. So there are plays in that spot where if everyone does limp into you, and you want to represent a big hand, or you do pick up a big hand, you can raise from that position, and you know that no one has raised ahead of you. So these are some things that you want to pay attention to. You always have to be aware of your position in the hand. And another thing you want to know about is, especially if you go heads up with a player, after the flop, who will have position? That's very, very important. Who's going to have position after the flop? So if you go heads up, if you have position, two good players against each other, the player in position will generally win. In the long run, they're going to win more hands. So that's more money in your pocket. So you have to be aware of that. So that's something very important. And likewise, if you're in early position, which means you have to come in, you're under the gun. Under the gun is the first to act after the blind. You have to be careful playing those hands because if you put in a raise, there's a lot of other players you have to go through. So you have to go through the whole table from that spot. So you want to raise with a pretty good solid hand in that spot. You don't want to raise with some kind of hand that you might be, something you might want to take a play at on the button. So you have to be careful. In that position, I might even limp in with like an ace-king, something like that. Whereas if I was in later position, I would probably go ahead and raise there. So position will definitely affect your play, so it's something you have to be aware of. So good luck with this. Okay, let's move into tip number 8, and that's to don't play scared. That's scared money don't make money. And if you've been around a casino or gamblers, you might have heard this saying. People like to say scared money don't make money. So basically, what I'm telling you here is, you have to be confident in your game, and you can't be afraid to make mistakes, and you can't be afraid to call as well. And this is a game. You have to realize that. And it's a strategy game, and it's cards on a table. There is some luck involved, but it's a lot of strategy. So you have to play within your means. You have to only risk money on the table that you can afford to lose, because if you're there and you're nervous and you're very scared to make a call, it's probably not going to go over well. So you have to keep that in mind. So generally what I do is when I'm in a situation and I'm at a table, I have to look at those those chips like they're chips. Even if that is money, and if you find yourself being where you can't handle the pressure, or you're too nervous, or you end up winning some money, you have a lot of money on the table and you don't want to lose it, you're afraid to call. Someone might be bluffing you. At that point, I would think just it's time to cash out, and maybe to buy back in later at a smaller stake or something like that, because poker generally in a cash game, it's table stakes. So if you start with a couple hundred and you make 1,000 or two, and some people can change their game, play differently. So you have to not play scared, and you can't let people bluff you sometimes. If you do, that's there's no shame in folding a good hand. But there are situations where if you think this guy's a bluffer, or you think this person's a bluffer, or this woman, you have to call, and you just have to make a stand, and you're either going to be right or wrong, and that's just the kind of game it is. So don't play scared. Play confident, and as you develop, as you play more hands, you will be more confident in different situations. So when you think a player's bluffing you, give them a call once in a while and see what they have. And you'll watch some real good players and professionals, and they'll do that. They'll look them up. That's what it's called, looking them up. So look up those players from time to time. Okay, let's shoot into tip number 9, and that's to know how many chips your opponent has and if they have you covered for an all-in. And this is very important, especially in a tournament or even a cash game. If you get involved with someone and they have more chips than you, then you're going to be at risk, to go broke. And so this is something you have to watch for. And if I want to survive in a tournament, I try to stay away from those big stacks. So you always have to know approximately how many chips your opponent has and if they have you covered. Because, if you have a good amount of chips at a table, say, and there's another player or two other players that have a similar stack, I don't really want to get involved with those players with those large stacks. I'd rather get involved later in the tournament unless I have a really strong hand. Because, some of those players, it can be a tough decision if I have to risk all my chips. Whereas if I go in against someone that has a smaller stack, I can make a call, and I'm not going to be at risk of going out of the tournament or going broke. So it's going to be a lot more favorable, and a lot of players don't pay attention to this, and you'll often hear a really good player or an experienced player ask an opponent how many chips they have, and especially sometimes you'll see these guys, or they'll try to cover their chips with their hands. And you have to be careful with that because sometimes they're hiding chips back there, and that's not illegal to do. And but you always have the right to know how many chips a player has. And sometimes you'll run into these people that get upset when you ask them how many chips you have. They just want to know approximately. Do you have me covered? That's usually the question. And I wouldn't worry about that. And just you can ask the dealer. You always have the right to know how many chips your opponent has. That's something in this game that you have the right to know. And it's not a secret. So some players will try to hide their chips, and especially if they get a good hand, they don't want to intimidate you. They want you to go all in. So this is something to look at. Okay, tip number 9. Okay, let's take a look at our last tip, and that's tip number 10, and that's the flop is everything in Texas Hold'em poker. And the more you play Texas Hold'em, you're really going to realize that the flop is the most important part of the game. It really is. Obviously, the river is important because that determines the hand. But the flop really, when you get involved with some good players, the flop is everything. So most people, especially good players, they're going to look for that flop and they're going to look to hit the flop. And they're not going to chase a lot of hands. They're not going to draw. They're not going to try to draw for a lot of hands. Occasionally, you will draw for a straight. You will draw for a flush, depending if you're open-ended. Or if you have, 4 hearts or 4 diamonds on the flop, depending on the pot size, you always have to look at the pot size. And there's just so many things to look at in poker. It's just such an interesting game, and I guess that's why so many people like it. But the flop is really the most important part of this game. And generally, if you don't hit that flop, and you're going to have to put money in the pot, that's not a good situation to be in. So you really want to make a good hand on the flop, and if you do have a good hand on the flop, you want to be aggressive about it and play your hand aggressively, and that's the best way to play this game overall. I mean, there's different scenarios and things can change, but definitely the flop is the most important part of the game. And some people, they'll overplay those big pairs. They might have a pair of kings or a pair of queens, say, and you have 2 hearts. 2 hearts. You have a heart and you have 2 red cards. You have a queen of hearts and a queen of diamonds, and the flop comes 3 spades. And in that situation, you got to be very, very careful because you don't have that flush possibility, and someone could already have you beat. They could already have a flush, so that's a very, very weak flop for your hand, even if it's 3 low cards. And they're 3 spades or 2 spades and a club, something like that. That's a very dangerous flop. So the flop is very important. If you like the flop, continue to play. And if it's not expensive or if no one is betting, then just try to check. In a situation like that. But you have to be very, very careful in situations like that. So play for the flop, and you're going to really improve your game. And if you don't hit the flop, don't be afraid to throw the hand away. There's always another hand coming in poker. That's the great thing about it. And there's always another session, another table waiting for you. So we hope you enjoyed these tips. And, there's certainly a lot more tips we could have covered. If you do like this video, Please like and subscribe to our channel, and please leave a comment below if you did enjoy this, and maybe we'll cover some more topics in the future about poker. So thank you so much, and look at us at runhorse.com.